Hi everyone, Pam Gregory, astrologer. I'm going to be speaking to you today about the first half of May and the very powerful full supermoon that we have coming up on the 7th. Now that full supermoon, I'm going to talk about in detail. That's one of the big events in early May. Two other events. One is the shift of the transiting nodal axis from Cancer and Capricorn, where it's been for the last 18 months, into the signs of Gemini and Sagittarius. But because that was way too much to put in this one video, I've done a separate video on that, and I'll put the link beneath this video. So you just go to shifting nodal axis into Gemini and Sagittarius on my channel and you'll find it. And all of the themes I'm talking about there, you have to fit into each of my updates over the next 18 months. Another big theme in May is it really is a month of retrogrades. We have 4 planets by halfway through May being retrograde. On the 24th of April, we had Pluto going retrograde at 25 degrees of Capricorn. That degree again, these last 5 degrees of Capricorn keep coming up again and again and again. If you have anything between 25 and the end of the cardinal signs, Aries, Cancer, Libra, you're going to find those areas of life are probably very activated and energized all through this year. So Pluto retrograde, it doesn't go direct again until the 4th of October. Saturn then goes retrograde on the 11th of May at 1 degree of Sagittarius. It backs up into Capricorn on the 2nd of July and it reverses back to 25 degrees of Capricorn again by 29th of September. Then we have Venus. 2 days later, 13th of May, we have Venus moving retrograde. 22 of Gemini, it backs up to 5 degrees of Gemini. And then finally, we have Jupiter the next day on the 14th. It is at, I believe, 27 of Capricorn, again, those last few degrees of Capricorn, and it backtracks all the way back to 17 of Capricorn by the 13th of September. So if we just look at Jupiter, Saturn, Pluto, between mid-September and very early October, we're going to have a shift of energy when those planets start to move direct again, because they're all moving direct within quite a short period of time. So we're going to feel a real shift towards well, that's going to be a super dynamic period, because for the second 6 months of the year we have Mars in its own sign of Aries, and that's going to be very, very active and dynamic in the world. But more of that in another update. So let me just talk about some of these retrogrades. In general, when a planet moves retrograde, the energy becomes more introspective. We're meant to turn inwards. We're not meant to keep pushing forward so much on those projects. And see where these degrees and signs fall in your chart. If you don't know what I'm talking about, you can download a free birth chart from my website, pamgregory.com. If you follow this link, you can get a 2-part teaching video, and that will explain how you find these areas in your chart, and therefore you'll better understand what this whole period means for you. But it's normally a turning inwards. It's a not pushing forward so much, particularly with Saturn retrograde, because you can get frustrated. So it's an excellent time to review, to go over, to perfect, if you like, whatever you're working on in those particular areas of life where these planets are falling. It's very interesting that when Saturn, planet of contraction, limitation, constriction, entered Aquarius, sign of freedom, on the 22nd of March, that's really when the lockdown started in a very widespread way across the world. It's also very interesting on the 11th of May when it moves retrograde, i.e. things are being pulled back, that we've seen with Saturn. That is the date that President Macron of France has said that the rollback of the lockdown will start to happen. So it's absolutely perfect for that day. And in many countries, you'll start to see some relaxation through that second half of May and into June of the contraction, the constriction, the limitation of our freedom because of the lockdown. The only thing to remember is whatever has been progressing forwards can resurge with the retrograde if the numbers of the virus have been coming down and the rules are relaxed. It is possible that we'll see a resurgence of the virus, but there are other ways we can deal with that. Let's just say that, and I'll come to that later. Venus retrograde. This is a very interesting one because Venus is in Gemini. And this is very social. This loves to connect. It's quite flirty. It's quite fun. But can we do that? No, we can't. We can't socialize closely together. We can do it online, Gemini. But many countries are saying that when we go out in public, when we're with other people, we have to wear masks. Venus is our appearance. Retrograde, we have to cover our appearance. And it's such a literal expression for me of that Venus retrograde in Gemini. We have to hide our appearance. And it may even cause some slight caution in interacting with people in the short term. We've just kind of lost the habit almost, or a certain amount of concern about it. The other meanings around Venus retrograde are that an old partner can come back into your life from the past, or you might be starting to feel that a relationship has run its course and you're really coming to the end of that. So those are the broad themes or broad meanings of some of the retrogrades, but it does pull our energy in a little. Let us now talk about Jupiter retrograde. And I think the important thing here, and I've mentioned some of these themes before, is that it really is conjunct Pluto all of this year, the rest of this year. It was exact on the 4th of April, it'll be exact again on the 30th of June, exact again on the 12th of November, but essentially it's weaving in and out of that conjunction. Now, several meanings, some of which I've mentioned before. Jupiter magnifies, expands whatever it touches. So yes, it is known as the millionaire's aspect. If people have Jupiter-Pluto conjunct in their chart, or by square, normally those are the two main aspects, it's known as the millionaire's aspect. Often people who accumulate great wealth because they're very resourceful, another aspect of Jupiter-Pluto. But equally, it can mean the opposite, because Pluto is also linked to debt, default, taxes. And with Jupiter conjunct it through this year, we could see enormous global debt, default of companies, even countries, and yes, much higher taxes that we as individuals have to pay to make up for that global contraction and businesses and economies really shutting down for an unprecedented length of time. So those themes, I think, will be coming up very strongly too. Excessive Jupiter power, Pluto. And yes, governments, many governments across the world have increased their powers in order to deal with the lockdown. Increased police powers, for instance, to deal with the lockdown to stop the spread of the virus. It will very much expand spiritual transformation. We're seeing that enormously, I think. People on a daily basis are really waking up to, and this links to another theme, to the way reality they thought operated, and now all of a sudden those beliefs are shattered. And this is really a very important part of the Jupiter-Pluto aspect, which is crisis, Pluto, in beliefs. Jupiter, crisis in beliefs. The way you thought the world was and operated all of a sudden has been shaken. And that really feeds into this bigger context. Remember, the big context for 2020 is this conjunction between Saturn and Pluto on the 12th of January. That colours the entire year. So that's our first layer of paint on the canvas, if you like, when we're looking at 2020, and everything else feeds into that. So whatever our crisis in beliefs are that can accelerate our spiritual transformation, they can also accelerate the collapse of the old order. So those are very important themes to remember, because they're going to keep popping up all the way through this year. Now let's talk about this full supermoon. Now this is the third full supermoon in a row. And there's a feeling of crescendo with it, really, a feeling of build-up. And what a supermoon is, it means the moon is very, very close to the Earth in its orbit. And full moons are always periods of intensity emotionally, where we feel feelings and emotions very, very strongly. It's the peak of the moon cycle. But all the more so when it's in a water sign. Water represents emotion. And all the more so when it's in Scorpio, because that is the sign of intensity. Okay, so this full supermoon is happening on the 7th of May. It's happening at 3:45 a.m. Pacific and 11:45 a.m. UK time. 1720 of Scorpio. So see where 1720 falls in your chart, in your own birth chart. And as I said, if you don't know, you can download a free one from my website. So normally a full moon is a completion, a culmination, a closure, or it can shine a light on something that we were unaware of before. So see where this falls in your chart and what this may mean for you, because we're going to be feeling very intense around this time. Now, Scorpio is the sign of secrets. Par excellence, more than any other, it's the sign of secrets. It's the sign of mysteries. And it's also the sign of digging deep. People who have strong Scorpio emphasis in their charts are very good at research normally, because they love to dig deep. And at this full supermoon, we have Mercury only 3 degrees away from the Sun, both in Taurus, in fact. Sorry, not Scorpio, but there's an urge to dig. There's an urge to dig very deeply and to get to the bottom. It's forensic, it's penetrating to get to the truth. So we're going to be seeing a lot of that at this time. Issues of trust and betrayal can come up very often with the revelation of secrets, because the full moon will shine a light, a very bright light, because the moon is going to be so close to the Earth and we'll see it as being huge in the sky. So it could reveal a lot of things that not only we'll feel intense about, and remember, Scorpio can be quite tough on the outside, but it has huge sensitivity on the inside. And it could be around issues of trust and betrayal. I think the other thing that's interesting here is that Scorpio and its ruler Pluto is still in Capricorn, remember, both the planet and the sign are connected to secrets which could be very sexual in nature. Scorpio is the sign of sexuality, and also to do with wealth in terms of illicit wealth, not fairly earned wealth. I mean, this came up at the Panama Papers, the discovery of the Panama Papers a few years ago. This was very connected to Scorpio and Plutonic energy, that secrets are revealed around those kind of subjects. And, you know, I remember years ago in the UK, Jimmy Savile, he died sadly, but he was a much loved UK television personality, and a lot of secrets came out around what he'd actually been doing. It was very linked to this Pluto Scorpio energy. So that's going to be interesting. And indeed, another meaning of this Jupiter-Pluto conjunction is that Jupiter will open up, again, Pluto, any secrets of the wealthy, of the powerful, particularly because Pluto is in Capricorn, which is the sign of leadership, the sign of government, the sign of big corporations and institutions. So this is going to be a really interesting time. Another important aspect at this full supermoon is that Venus in Gemini is very tightly square to Neptune in Pisces. Now, Gemini is about information. And Neptune, the square to Neptune, makes those things a bit foggy, a bit unclear, a bit unfocused, a bit not quite sure now. So a big theme, and I talked about this in the Nodal Axis video that I just filmed, there could be quite a big theme this year of what is true and what is not. What is true and what is not. Because we're going to have surges of awakening as we go through this year. The Aquarian energy of awakening is very strong. And then when we've got that layer of truth and we think that's it, there could be another layer where, actually there's a lot more to discover. So I think we're going to go through waves of truth and then not sure, and then something else is revealed. I think that's going to be really a theme for the year. And also Venus square to Neptune in Pisces. This is a real yearning for love, unrequited love. So that could be that you've been in a romance, but you weren't actually living together. Now you're separated by lockdowns in separate houses. So that can feel torturous if that's the case. Or it can just be a yearning for love in general, social contact that you're missing so much. So be aware of that, but remember that we are still connected spiritually all of the time, and we're still connected digitally. And the reminder of our spiritual connection is that the moon is very closely trine, moon in Scorpio trine to Neptune in Pisces. And this is this feeling of everyone connecting in oneness, connecting to source, and a feeling of compassion and unconditional love coming through strongly. So that's a super, super sensitive side of this full supermoon. But I want to kind of pull back to the grittier side, if you like, of Scorpio. Because the ancient ruler of Scorpio was Mars. Mars is known for its courage, for its bravery. And equally, Scorpio does not flinch from challenges. It learns through conquering its fears. It learns through just going beyond whatever it sees as a challenge and growing as a result. It's very connected, Scorpio, to underground matters as well. I mentioned, this digging deep. It's connected to things like mining as well, digging deep in the earth, but it's also connected to underhand things as well. Scorpio has an instinctive understanding of the kind of taboo areas of life, let's say. It just kind of, but it is also at this full moon able to shine light on those and transmute them, just release them to the light. So it has this essential courage, this grit, this bravery to it. It is also by far the best sign for a laser beam focus. It can lock on to whatever it wants to achieve, whatever goal it has, and be unrelenting until it has achieved that. So this can give us great strength in our physical lockdowns, because, as I so often mention, we are co-creating in every moment, even when we're completely unaware of it. And we're co-creating from our thoughts and emotions, which we're broadcasting all of the time. Now, I actually talked about this in my first book, that you can measure those frequencies, those thoughts emitting, being broadcast from our heads by a magnetoencephalograph. And Dr. Bruce Lipton reminded me of this the other day, that I'd written about it, because it can measure your thoughts, the frequency of your thoughts outside of your head. So this isn't just all happening in your head, we are pushing them out to the world. And this is really important because we have an impact not only on the people we are in close proximity with, but we have an impact on the world. If you've been to a Joe Dispenza workshop, he measures the energy in the room at the beginning of the workshop and at the end after days of meditation, and it is dramatically different. Look at the HeartMath work. They have actually measured when mass meditations happen, people come together in high vibration, coherent energy, and they can measure that. This, again, isn't woo-woo, it's measurable. So this is our power in this lockdown. Because and I've talked about these before, but some of the transits, the conjunctions that we have through 2020 are enormous. They've only happened once every several hundred years. And again, go back to previous videos for that. But so this isn't just about creating our todays and tomorrows, which indeed we are doing. It is about creating a whole new era for humanity, a whole new episode for humanity. And I'm getting goosebumpy now because I feel that so deeply in my bones. This is huge, and therefore see yourself in this pause as being in a chrysalis. You're in a chrysalis. And we are spinning and weaving in every moment the beautiful butterflies that we're going to become. All of us being released from lockdown. What do we want our butterflies to look like? And what is really exciting, I think, in terms of where does our power lie? Our power lies in this energetic focus that we have of our thinking and our feeling. But on social media, Aquarius, remember we have 2 planets in Aquarius, Saturn and Mars, the activator. Within hours, we have been able to organise mass meditations across the globe, and we have made a significant difference to the energy in the earth. So this is the power of the people. The power of the people coming together collectively, social media, Aquarius, and really in that kind of collaboration, raising the energy of the collective, not just for tomorrow, not just for next week, but for the long term. And this is really so exciting for us as a possibility. So I'm thinking almost of this period, the combination of this full supermoon that is so strong in Scorpio and the Aquarian energy, which is going to become stronger over the coming years, as a kind of spiritual activism, spiritual Scorpio, Aquarius activism. Because what do we want our vision to be? Do we want more freedom in our lives? Aquarius, linked to freedom. Do we want more high vibration love in our lives? Yes, absolutely, for sure. Do we want people to be treated much more equally? Aquarius, egalitarian, with more respect and love for every living being. This feeling of everyone sharing in this earth. So for me, they are some of the principles that we have to work with, spiritual principles. Aquarius is about your high ideals. Scorpio, spiritual, your high spiritual principles that we can really focus on as a group, using the power of social media. That is our freedom right now. And I think it is tremendously exciting because we're proving we can make a difference in the world. And they can be, as I say, they have been arranged really fast within a few hours. Really exciting. I think the other thing I'd just like to mention is at these times that we're going through when we are in physical separation, very often people living on their own, it's important to have sources of inspiration. And one of the great sources of inspiration for me over the last few years, and someone who has enriched my life enormously is a being called Zachariah, who is an aspect of an ascended master. He's channeled, and I'll put the details of that below, because if you join on Patreon, you can receive a channeling every month, beautiful channeling, but also very often a free meditation as part of that package. And the meditations just take me in seconds to such a deep place. I'm listening to those every day and they just woomph. I'm butter melting in the sun, and they get me to a very happy place of peace and love. So just suggest that to you if you're interested, something I've experienced over the last few years. I'll put the link below for you. And if you want more information about my books, my videos, my long monthly newsletter, when I can go into more detail on many of these subjects, just check out my website, pamgregory.com. And I really hope that's been helpful to you. And I feel very inspired. I feel very excited about this full supermoon in Scorpio. I think much will come to the fore. I have an ascendant in Scorpio, so I'm feeling super excited about it. I think it's going to take us to a whole new level of understanding and awakening. Enjoy this full moon in Scorpio. Hope it's a clear night and you can see it really close to the earth, and bye for now.